Unsolved.
Episode 198, JonBenet Case, Chapter 13. This episode is not just about Chapter 13, but up to Chapter 13. That's where I'm at with reviewing the book, and I wanted to point out different things that I found in the book interesting. So here we go. I found this paragraph written by John Ramsey quite entertaining. To this day, more than 3 years later, we still don't know why the killer chose this odd figure. It was one of the strangest components in this mystery. Patsy knew nothing about the amount of the bonus because I took care of the finances, and we rarely talked about money. The $118,117.50 I earned that year was deferred compensation, so there was no point discussing the matter with her. Another thing John mentions in his book to kind of prove his innocence, like why would he hire John Douglas, a famous FBI policeman, and he hired Ellis Armistead with 18 years of police experience and David Williams. But this kind of works two ways. One, they are looking into the case and trying to find out who killed JonBenet, but on the other hand, they didn't find anybody. So obviously they're most likely not going to point the finger at the Ramseys because they're the one paying them. And all three of them, with their investigative skills, couldn't find somebody, an intruder, that killed JonBenet. And I don't even know if they could even show that somebody entered the Ramseys' house that night. So, and another thing John complains about is the police wouldn't arrange a meeting or work with his detectives. But if he could see both sides of the issue, he would see the reason these people were hired by the attorneys are they're going to show in court how John Ramsey and Patsy Ramsey didn't commit this murder. They're going to point out all these things to make it look like they're innocent. So that's the point of these detectives, is to prove the Ramseys' innocence. And again, they didn't find a killer or even a good suspect. So, one point that John Ramsey brings up in his book is, he says, "Yet, why would I have given them the notepad if either of us had actually written the note?" And that's a good point. And that's why maybe Detective Steve Thomas felt like Patsy had killed JonBenet in the night over bedwetting issue or something like that out of frustration. And that John Ramsey found out later in the morning when the police were there. And then he just went along and protected Patsy. John Ramsey writes about starting up his business in Atlanta out of his basement. And this is where I was talking about the computer terminology in the ransom note. Monitor, scanning you for electronic devices. And there's more of that in the ransom note. And here in the book it says sending printers, plotters, and digitizers. And so this is where I said that he would be familiar with this kind of language or use this kind of language. But one thing that I noticed in the book, Patsy was working right along there with John as a secretary. And so she would have been familiar with scanners and computer electronics and that kind of thing also. And it says here she typed letters, made deposits at the bank. So I might have been leaning a little bit too much on John with the ransom note, in the fact that she could have used a lot of that same computer terminology. Another thing odd to me in this case is Mike Bynum. It's just strange that John Ramsey's good best friend, it seems like, is an attorney. I guess that's the advantage of being rich. But December 26th, the day they found JonBenet's body, he's at their house, at the Fernie's house, with John Ramsey. And the detectives come by, and he's telling them not to talk to the detectives. And he takes up their case for them. And then later, he's an investment partner in Jay's, I forgot what it's called, Jay's. And the Ramseys are staying the night at his house, and then they do meetings. In another attack on the Boulder Police Department, John and Patsy Ramsey were worried about Burke's safety at school when he returned to school. And so they worked with the school to keep him safe and to hire or have somebody there to watch, be in the classroom to watch. And in the book it says that the principal once called 911 and they never showed or responded to the 911 call. And I just find this impossible to believe. And so I think either they're mistaken and the principal didn't call 911, and they responded and nothing came of it. In conclusion of this episode, so far in the book, there's not a lot about JonBenet. You know, Patsy talks about not being able to get out of bed and upset. But there's not a lot of stories about JonBenet or what a great kid she was or things like that. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved, and I gotta go and get the turkey out of the oven and get ready for dinner. And tomorrow night's episode will be about the Zodiac Killer case and a different suspect, and hopefully it'll be a good episode. So I'll see you tomorrow.